All right, welcome Woodland families. Thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to join me to talk about math. For those of you that don't know me as a familiar face, my name is Francesca Feidenkevitz, and I've been teaching first grade at Woodland School for the past 5 years. This year's been quite different, right? We all know that. I've been teaching fully remote since the start of the school year. So I'm pretty used to the ins and outs of Zoom and working hard to engage first graders in front of a screen all day. And the nature of remote learning, I know that the families are close by. They're listening in to what's happening each day. So despite all the challenges that remote learning has presented, it did present a unique opportunity for parents to get a glimpse into the daily teaching and learning. I've welcomed the families in my remote classroom to not just take a back seat, but when able, join in on the learning process. And I've been very purposeful to equip them with language and questioning that help the learner in front of them during our math instruction block. And I thought, what a great opportunity to invite families in to hear how we are teaching math in a very authentic way. So I'm currently enrolled in the Math Education and Teacher Leadership Master's Program at Mount Holyoke College, where I'll graduate this summer. And for my capstone project, I chose a focus of working to build a stronger connection between what's happening in the classroom and how families can best support the learning at home. So tonight, we're going to explore this shift in math education, and I hope to open up the mystery around new math. We have our district STEM coach, Beth Grady, with us tonight, and she's going to be here to help us with any tech issues that might come up throughout the presentation, and also to help answer any questions that you may have during the presentation that we can work to answer at the end of the presentation. And there is a feature for questioning. If you have a question throughout the presentation, feel free to jot that in, and Beth will help me to highlight some of the great questions that will be most applicable to the group that we have here tonight. So I have to be honest, I did not start my teaching career teaching math in this way. But over the past few years, with the support of our administration and district coaches, and providing us high-level professional development in the area of mathematics, I believe wholeheartedly that your child is benefiting from this instructional shift and will continue to have a growth mindset as they continue their math journey. So let's begin. So let's change how we talk about math. This is not how I learned math. If I were to take a guess, many of you have said something like this when trying to help your child, or at least thought this in your head. In the survey that many of you completed for me a bit ago, you wanted to know about the approaches and methods and tools and strategies. Like, how are we teaching math today? You wanted to know more information to better support your child without giving them the answer. So throughout our time tonight, I hope to change the conversation to, wow, I wish I had learned math like this. We have a packed night for you all. We're going to start by taking a moment to reflect on our own math identity. Then we will do some math together. Trust me, it will be fun. Don't let that blood pressure rise. Don't sign off. We're just getting started. Then I'm going to give a breakdown of our daily math instruction, following some big ideas in our instructional approach, and wrap up with some takeaways around purposeful questioning. And of course, we'll leave time at the end for some questions and answering. So I'd like to model with any strong lesson plan, it's important to have clear goals. So tonight, I hope that you glean better insight into our district's approach to math instruction, and also have at least a few takeaways to better support your child, no matter what grade level they are in. So let's take a moment to reflect on our own math identity. I'm going to put some images up on the screen, and I'm going to ask you to think about which image you best connect with about your confidence in math as a young learner. Were you a cheetah running with mathematical confidence throughout your schooling and perhaps went further into your education, and maybe that's something in your profession today? Were you the coasting otter, comfortable otter, just coasting through your understanding, just enough to get by? Or were you this elephant, baby elephant, struggling to get through the mud, working so hard each day, but just getting nowhere? In a moment, I'm going to put a poll up on the screen, and I'm going to ask you to select the image that you best reflect with. So that should have appeared on your screen. Thank you. I see responses coming in. I'll give another 5 seconds. And I'll end the poll. All right, so I'm going to share our data, and you actually threw me for a loop. All right. Our data shows that most people felt like they were just that coasting otter. I thought maybe you would say that struggling elephant, but I'm glad you were that coasting otter. But that coasting otter still just had enough to get by. So why is that? Why didn't we feel confident running with that mathematical confidence? So for many of us, when we learned math, it was challenging. We couldn't make connections, and we were told to solve the problem with a sequence of steps. Answers were simply wrong or right. In 2019, for the book Adding Parents to the Equation, Understanding Your Child's Elementary School Math, a group of 200 parents were surveyed about how they feel when their children come home with math today. And there were 4 words that were most frequently used: intimidated, frustrated, worried, and confused. Take a moment to think about which emotion connects with your experience thus far. Parents described they felt intimidated because their children were learning math in a totally different way, and they didn't believe they could be helpful. They felt frustrated because they felt unintelligent and just unable to do that 3rd grade math homework. They felt worried. They were anxious that their children would fail because of them. They didn't know how to help. And some felt confused because what they were seeing with their child, their child was bringing home, just felt so different. It almost felt like a foreign language. So you might have had some connection with one of these four emotions because you're not yet confident in your understanding in how we are teaching math today, or the importance of conceptual understanding. So then and now, let's start to unpack this new math. In school, when we were in school, we learned math by memorizing facts, taking time tests, working alone, just following a set of steps given to us by the teacher. This is a very procedural way of learning, following steps with no true understanding of the task in front of us. This new math kind of threatens our experiences of those procedural algorithms. And that's what kind of summarizes our learning experiences. We have memories of rote step-by-step procedures, and it looks very different now. So to start to break down the walls in the mystery of new math, the math standards have not changed. The change or shift occurs in how we are teaching. So now we want our students to be curious about the math in front of them. We want them making sense of the math for themselves. We want them talking and listening to their classmates, sharing their ideas, their strategies, defending their thinking. It's not just about getting the right answer. And we also want them comfortable with making mistakes. That's how we learn. So putting an emphasis on making sense of the problem leads to a better conceptual understanding. This is where students can transfer what they have learned to new situations. I want to share this quote with you from the book called Principles to Actions from the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics. To use mathematics effectively, students must be able to do much more than carry out mathematical procedures. They must know which procedure is appropriate and most productive in a given situation, what a procedure accomplishes, and what kind of results to expect. Mechanical execution of procedures without understanding their mathematical basis often leads to bizarre results. So here in this quote, I want to highlight that procedural understanding will only get our students so far. We must put an emphasis on how our students are conceptually understanding the math task in front of them. I'm going to take a moment for a personal anecdote. Perfect example, dividing fractions, right? Whose heart just skipped a beat just saying those words? In middle school, I thought I could memorize the steps and get the right answer, but maybe I just couldn't memorize them. Maybe when I get to the assessment, I have a blank. I can't transfer what I've learned, and especially to new situations. I just was trying to remember the steps, numerator, denominator, flipping, leading to a bizarre result. I did not conceptually understand what was happening when we were dividing those pieces, dividing those fractions. So you've heard from your child's teacher, I'm sure, that being able to read fluently leads to a greater understanding of the text. And building that fluency takes practice. So just like reading, we want to build fluency in math so our students can show us they understand the task in front of them. So we are working hard through our curriculum and the math tasks that we are providing to have our students be flexible, efficient, and accurate. We want our students to be flexible, to be able to approach the problem using different strategies in different ways. We want them to be efficient. We want them to be able to choose a strategy that best fits the problem and but also that they understand well. And of course, we want them to be accurate and produce a correct answer. But even more importantly, being able to explain their thinking, defend why that answer is correct. We want to see and hear this students' fluent math thinking and given a task like this. So let's do some math together. Okay. We're going to take a look at this image, and I'm curious, what do you notice? And I'm wondering, Beth, if you're seeing any participants raising their hand, I wonder if you could help me out so we can start to get some math around this image.
Yeah, so there's some things coming in the question and answer also. One of them is saying a missing duck.
Okay, great. So someone's noticing that one duck is missing. Already seeing the math that's there in front of us. We have that one duck missing, and let me recognize that. We have one duck missing. Wonderful. Anything else?
Yep. Evan Jellison, you should be able to unmute, I believe, or Mrs. Feinkevitz, we may need to unmute. Oh, and they texted it into the chat too. 1 shy of a dozen.
Oh, some really great math language there. 1 less, 1 shy of a dozen. I'm wondering, could someone put in what's a math equation to match what that means?
I'm seeing that someone mentioned they see 12 and minus the 1 to get
perfect. We're going to reflect that thinking. 12 take away 1 equals, and do they have an answer?
Some of them do. They did say 11.
11. Wonderful.
And then another person saw it as a group of 6 on the left and a group of 5 on the right.
Oh, perfect. So we're going to see a group of 6 here and a group of 5. And let's reflect that in a number sentence. 6 plus 5 equals 11. Wonderful. Maybe is there one more way that we see the image in front of us?
Someone sees it as a 4 by 3 and then minus 1, a 4 by 3 array.
Okay, all right. So, maybe I'll show that as 4 by 3 and then like take away 1. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And then another one saw it as a row of 4, a row of 3, a row of 4.
Awesome. So we have 4 plus 3 plus 4.
Yeah, so that would be going horizontally. And then they did see
Let me reflect that.
And
like this?
Yes. And just the last one here is going.
Oh, keep them coming.
Going vertically, a 3, 3, 2, 3.
Okay. So a group of 3, a group of 3, a group of 2, and a group of 3. Lots of add-ins there. 3 plus 3 plus 2 plus 3. Yeah, has the sum of 11. Awesome. We'll stop there. I wish we could hear from everyone. But wow, take a look. Look at all the different ways that you saw math in this image. This is exactly the type of routine that your child is experiencing in their math instruction. We want students to see all these different ways to see this picture in different ways. Where is the math involved here? So with this type of routine, students might say, at the youngest level, I see rubber ducks. The ducks are yellow. The teachers are working to validate all participation. Everyone has something to share with a super cute image like this. It engages them. It brings them in. They're curious. How many ducks are there? And then students can start to recognize really the math in this image. One duck is missing. Someone noticed that right off the bat. And then other participants started to notice groups. This is exactly how we want our students to see an image like this. So this is just one example of a math warm-up that your students might engage in. So we're going to shift into our daily math instruction blocks. And this slide gives you a sense of what our instruction block looks like. There are 4 main components. A warm-up, similar to something that we just engaged in together, or it could be a counting routine, a skip counting routine, or counting by tens. And here, the teacher, I break it down what the students are doing and what the teachers are doing. The teachers are calling on a range of students, encouraging and validating all participation. That's getting our math minds warmed up. Then we shift into a launch. Here, the teacher's setting the stage. There's some mathematical story that the students are going to be exploring. And the students are listening in. They're starting to bring some sense making to the problem. Then we shift into a longer exploration time. And while students are working, the teacher is kind of bouncing around and listening in to what sense making the students are bringing to the task. They're asking questions. They're curious about how that student is using the tool in front of them. Or maybe if that student is struggling to get started, they might prompt, is there a tool that you could use to help you make sense of the problem? Or could you draw a picture to help you make sense of the problem? And the students during this time, they might be working individually, but they might also be working with peers to make sense of the problem. And they're choosing their strategy. They're using tools or drawing a picture to help them make sense of the problem. And this is the longest portion of our daily instruction. And then we conclude with a student share. The teacher role during this time is really facilitating and helping students make connections between the student work and what the students did themselves. The students are sharing how they solved the problem, how they used the tool to make sense of the work in front of them, and students feel proud to show their work. And this is a great time to give compliments of student work, ask questions. And, I always like to say, who wants to check out this strategy next time we have a similar task, or the next time that we, have a challenging task? Maybe this strategy could help us. Who wants to check out this strategy next time? So I want to note that the teachers are not telling their way or giving a set of steps to follow at any point in this daily instruction. So I've made use of, or I've made mention of the use of mathematical tools. Tools help your child make sense of the task in front of them. And we encourage a range of tools and to be flexible in using those tools as well. When we were young math learners, there was often this negative stigma around needing the use of tools. We're working hard to break down that perception, especially at the elementary level where it's so important to have that concrete tool in front of you to help them. So we're encouraging all students to use tools. And tools help show their thinking, but also prove their thinking. Here on the right side of the slide, I have some popular tools that we provide in the classroom. To note a 10 frame, and I'm going to go into more detail about that next. We have snap cubes, individual cubes to represent pieces of the problem. We have a hundreds chart that could help them. And I also have this tool called a Reckon Rack. It's that bottom tool in the bottom right-hand portion of the screen. And you're going to notice red beads and white beads and grouped in fives. So there's 5 red and then 5 white. So 10 in total on the top and similar on the bottom. And the reason for 5 and 10 is that these numbers, these are considered anchor numbers in math. We want students to be able to group these numbers 5 and 10 and count on and back from these anchor numbers. And it's a really powerful tool to see groups of numbers and start to get away from one-to-one correspondence or counting one by one. So I want to spend a little bit more time with this tool, this powerful tool called the 10 frame. So it's comprised of 10 total boxes, 5 on the top and 5 on the bottom. And again, this tool is really useful for students to start grouping objects and getting away from counting one-to-one. So if we're looking to solve the problem, just the math equation 6 plus 2. A student could draw circles or move counters, or their snap cubes, on top of the pen frame. Like this, let's show the first part is 6. The first addend is 6. Okay. And then they could show 2 more, 1, 2, for that second addend. So here, since students know that there are 5 boxes on the top and every box is filled in, instead of counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, they can group that 5 together and count on 5, 6, 7, 8. And here we also see that 5 plus 3 more equals 8. So 6 plus 2 has a sum of 8, but also 5 plus 3. And this helps for students to start making connections to equivalence. So along with providing tools, we want our students to use efficient strategies to help them solve the problems. And I'm going to highlight some of them that we see most frequently at the elementary level. And I want to make clear that we're not explicitly teaching these strategies, but through purposeful tasks in our rich curriculum, we're providing opportunities for students to arrive at these strategies themselves. And that just makes it that more authentic for the student. And then when a student brings this idea to their peers, we put a name to it. And here are some of the names that we have for these strategies. Students could count all. Now, let's have the example 5 plus 2. They're going to put out their 5 counters and then 2 more counters. Students using this strategy, though, this count all, are not yet confident in their groupings. So they're going to go back and count each individual to make sure how many are there. They're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We encourage our students to start to see groups of objects. So in this counting on strategy, we'll keep the same example, 5 plus 2. They know that first part is 5. They're going to lock that in their brain and count on 2 more, 6, 7. Continuing, putting an emphasis on seeing groups is Subitizing. This might be a little more unfamiliar to you, but just like our rubber ducky example earlier, students, seeing this dot image, how are they grouping these dots together? How are they counting? They might count each individual dot, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? And if I call on a student that says that, yes, you counted each individual dot. Did anyone else see the image a different way? Someone might see a group of 3 on the left and a group of 3 on the right, and they know they're double stacked. 3 plus 3 is 6. They might see 3 groups of 2. Students might also, depending on the task in front of them, use a strategy of skip counting, 2, 4, 6, or counting by 5s or counting by 10s. We encourage our students to start to recognize these doubles and near double stacks. So if I know that 4 plus 4 equals 8, when I'm come to a problem 4 plus 5, I know that 4 plus 4 equals 8. And to just add 1 more, because it's 4 plus 5. So I'm going to add 1 more to 8 to get 9. And a make 10 strategy. We're going to bring back that tool of a 10 frame. Students can put that first part, 8, and then 4 more. But hey, look, that 10 frame is completely filled. There's 10 there. And again, that's an anchor number, 10. It can count on from that. Instead of 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, it could go 10, 11, 12. So these strategies range from less sophisticated to more sophisticated. And students typically use these strategies on a continuum. And we want our students to be flexible in their strategy use and continue to challenge themselves to continue to use more sophisticated strategies as they go up the grades. So as I mentioned on the previous slide, student-led strategies and also the use of tools fall on a continuum. And this graphic shows strategy islands to more concrete, representational, or abstract. Our youngest learners are working in that concrete sense to beginning. If I have 2 cookies and Beth has 1 cookie, I can use a concrete tool, a snap cubes, to show I have 2 and my friend Beth has 1. And how many together? 3. And once students have more confidence and more practice in that concrete thinking, we're going to shift to a representational thinking. We're going to challenge them. Can you use a different tool to show your thinking? And this could be similar to a 10 frame or a number path. And here we still see, I have 2 cookies. My friend Beth has 1 cookie. I see 3 cookies in all. And again, once confident in this representational thinking, they're going to start shifting to, if they're given a number story, Francesca has 2 cookies, Beth has 1 cookie, how many cookies do they have in all? They can go right to that abstract of just pulling out those numbers and making sense of the problem that they need to add. 2 plus 1 equals 3. So with these islands, and I'm going to bring us back to that share portion of our daily instruction block. The teacher is going to bring or going to find students that are on each of these islands. And each student is going to share their concrete thinking. And then the teacher is going to help facilitate making connections to a representational thinking and hoping to push those concrete thinkers to be able to think in a representational way. And the similar to representational to concrete. So every day we are working to build connections between these islands and the more connections we can make, the more solid the math thinking will be for the child. In order to keep progressing through, to each island, students must experience something called productive struggle. That productive struggle is happening kind of when we're encouraging students to challenge themselves to show their thinking in new ways. I want to highlight this quote again from the same text, Principles to Actions. Teaching that embraces and uses productive struggle leads to long-term benefits, with students more able to apply their learning to new problems. So, productive struggle. This is the place where the learning happens. Learning happens in that moment of struggle. That teacher is there asking purposeful, guiding questions to help that student continue to make sense of the problem in front of them. And that productive struggle, it's when they push through it, that's that aha moment, that how the student is making sense of that problem. And it's in that aha moment that that student internalizes. They were able to do that on their own and push through with the guidance of purposeful questioning from the teacher. And we are working hard to provide students opportunities to make sense of the problem themselves. And struggle is going to happen. Struggle is a part of learning, but we want to put in that productive struggle. We want our students to push through this to reach that aha moment, because that's something that they're always going to remember. That exhilaration, that feeling of success when they were able to arrive at an answer that makes sense. So when we show students our way of doing something, we rob them of that aha moment. And we want our students to continue to push themselves, challenge themselves, and be curious about the math in front of them. Promoting math curiosity. The families in my remote classroom, have been hearing this a lot. Notice math everywhere. Children are hardwired to be curious. They naturally notice patterns and ask questions about the world around them. So to continue to promote math curiosity, when they're playing with their toys, taking them out, or putting them back, counting them, sorting them. Any card games are, rich examples of seeing math. Just seeing math on the card themselves, how that, card of 6 looks like. Cooking and baking, tons of natural ways for to see math. Even the shapes of street signs. And the dinner table can be full of mathematical opportunities. So to help give more examples of promoting math curiosity, I have a short video clip for us next. This is a math teacher, but also a parent. And
as a parent, I want my kids to love reading because
we do a quick sound check, making sure that everyone can hear it.
You're good.
Perfect.
I love reading and I want to share that experience with them. But not only that, I've heard over and over again that the best way to prepare my kids for kindergarten is to read to them as much as possible. So my wife and I, we fill our kids' shelves with picture books. We go to the library to get more. We even use that handy rule of thumb. Read to your kids for 20 minutes every day. And it's true that reading readiness is really important to our kids' future success. But do you know what's even more important? Math readiness. In fact, I recently read a study that looked at a bunch of different traits of kindergartners, and the trait that was most predictive of future academic success was math readiness when entering kindergarten. More than social and emotional skills, more than attention, more than reading. Math mattered the most. Which, for a parent, is sort of a terrifying thought to consider, because we don't have a rule of thumb for math readiness. We don't have a read 20 minutes every day type of rule. And so most of us have no idea how to help our kids develop a mathematical mindset. I mean, frankly, a lot of adults had a pretty negative experience with math themselves, and they just never really felt like they were math people. And so for them, there's no plan. They're just desperately hoping that their kids somehow turn out to be math people, because otherwise they're in trouble. Well, I'm here to tell you, as a math teacher and a parent, that there is a lot you can do to help your child explore math, whether or not you're a quote-unquote math person. And it doesn't involve flashcards or workbooks or any of the normal things that you traditionally associate with math. All it involves is playing with your kids and talking about the math that comes up naturally. It's legitimately fun. I have 3 simple guidelines to help you and your kids explore the world of math. You might not realize it, but when you ask your kid, do you want to wear the red shirt or the blue one? You're teaching them how to distinguish colors. Likewise, if you ask your kids, do you want 5 grapes or 10? You're giving them an opportunity to reason with numbers. Our kids' lives are rich with the languages of color, size, smell, taste, and texture. We should make sure that they are just as full of the languages of number, shape, and pattern. My favorite time to do this is dinner time. Because in my house, at least, dinner time is a war over bites. How many you've had and how many you've still got left. So every night, our dinner table is just full of numbers. Okay, you've got to eat 10 bites. And you've had 6, which is great, but it's taken you 30 minutes. And now my patience is just about at 0. So can we please just have those last 4 bites? It wasn't a big change in my parenting. I just started using numbers whenever they occurred to me. So I'd set a timer for 7 minutes before bath time, or I'd ask my daughter to get me 2 blocks of cheese at the grocery store. And I didn't just do this with numbers. I'd point out circles and rectangles and everyday objects, or I'd notice out loud when I saw a symmetrical design. That way, their day was just saturated with numbers and shapes and patterns. And it doesn't feel like capital M math to them. These ideas just become part of the way that they interpret the world. For many adults, most of their math memories are focused on flashcards and worksheets and timed tests. It seems impossible that math could be playful. But kids, especially little kids, don't come to math with that baggage. In fact, little kids love math. They love searching the world for patterns and showing you how high they can count. And you can extend that sense of playfulness by playing games and activities with your kids that provoke mathematical conversations. In fact, something as simple as using wooden blocks to build a tower can be a really rich mathematical experience, especially if you bring in the language of geometry to talk about round and flat and circle and triangle and rectangle. Board games and card games are a great way to build number sense, and kids love to play them. My son's favorite game is this game called Uncle Wiggly, which is pretty simple. You just pick a card with a number on it, and you go that number of spaces. When we started playing this game, my son could recognize his numbers, but he didn't have a really good sense of how big they were. So sometimes he'd draw a 6, and he'd go 7 spaces or 4 spaces. But over time, as we played, he got better at counting spaces, and then he started realizing new things about numbers. For example, he realized that 12 was a really good card in this game, and 3 was pretty bad. And so I remember one day I went to draw a card and I didn't show it to him. Instead, I just looked at it all sad and I said, "Oh, buddy, I picked a really bad card. Is it a 3? It's lower. Is it a 2? Lower. Is it a 1? And I acted all dejected, but inside I was beaming because I realized over the course of a couple months, he had gone from somebody who didn't know how big numbers were to somebody who was fluently comparing them and looking at greater and less than and all these new mathematical concepts. And at no point did we sit down and have a math lesson. We were just hanging out. The point is, kids already love math. And if you play math with them, you might find out why. Kids ask questions, lots of questions. And usually I answer them. If we're at the zoo and my daughter asks me what that animal is, I tell her it's a giraffe because there's no way for her to know on her own. But if she asks me a math question, like, what's 5 plus 3? I might not answer her. In fact, I usually have a question of my own. My favorite question is, what do you think? Now, I could answer her question and she'd nod and walk away. But if I ask her what she thinks, now we're having a conversation. Because no matter what she says, I already have a follow-up. If she says, I think the answer's 8, I'll ask her, how do you know? And if she says, I think it's 7, I'll ask her, how do you know? Because this part, when they explain their thinking, is when you really get a chance to look inside your kid's head. Maybe they say, I think it's 8 because I have 5 fingers on this hand, and then it's 6, 7, 8. Or maybe they say, I think it's 8 because I'm 5 right now, and in 3 birthdays, I'll be 8 years old. Whatever they answer, it provides you an opportunity to ask another question, to deepen the conversation and get into new territory. But let's say your daughter thinks the answer is 7. Maybe she says something like, I think it's 7 because you start at 5 and then it's 5, 6, 7. Now, instead of correcting her immediately, maybe you could provide her an opportunity to correct herself. Like you get out some blocks or some quarters or something and say, show me. Let's make a group of 5 and a group of 3 and count them up, see what happens. Now, it doesn't matter what you use, blocks or quarters or jelly beans or whatever. You're not the one who's correcting her mistake. She's using math to correct herself. And that is a lesson that she will use for the rest of her life because it shows her that she can understand math on her own. 5 plus 3 equals 8. And it doesn't equal 8 because mom and dad say so. It just does. The more you ask, what do you think and how do you know? The more your kids will take ownership over their own math ideas and want to make new ones. And then they'll really start thinking like a mathematician. I'll have a lot more to say in future videos about all 3 of these rules of thumb. But for now, just remember, use the language of math, play, and focus on questions, not on answers. If you do that, you'll be well on your way to raising kids who see math as a subject that's worthy of exploring and understanding and playing with. And you might even surprise yourself with how much you like it.
So my biggest takeaway from this math teacher and parent, and what I hope you gleaned as well, is focus on questions, not answers. Have them explain their thinking. Ask, how do you know? Put the thinking back on your child and have their natural curiosity soar. So there were many takeaways that you could have from the presentation, but also this specific video. And in a moment, I'm going to send out another poll to you. And I'm curious, which idea around bringing more natural math curiosity into your home are you most likely to try? How are you feeling inspired after this presentation? What do you feel like you can do right now? Could you incorporate more card games or board games? Could you include more math talk around the dinner table? Could you verbalize the math that you see around you to your kids? And ask, how do you know? Always following up their answer with a question. All right, I'm going to launch this poll out to you. So please take a moment. Gonna give everyone a minute. 5 more seconds. All right, I'm gonna end the poll now, and I'm gonna share the results. All right, this is how you're feeling inspired. We have a good portion of the participants just incorporating more card games and board games. This is great. You want to verbalize the math that you see around you. So, and it can be natural. It doesn't need to be forced. See, share what you see around you, that the symmetry, the shapes, and great. Most families, this is wonderful. They want to ask, how do you know? Following up the child's answer with another question. That is wonderful. Thank you. I hope you feel inspired. So sometimes kids, it's honorable, but you can be at the ready with questions during our student exploration, and that I've encouraged the families in my remote classroom to ask when working with their child in front of them. What are you picturing when the problem is read to you? Can you act out this problem? Can you explain the problem to me in your own words? Where did you get this number from? Or why, what does that number mean in your problem? What does that represent? Can you use a tool or a manipulative to help you solve this problem? And can you draw a picture of what the problem is telling you? Again, questioning to get, the more the student is talking, the more learning is happening. And as we start to wrap up this evening, I just have a few. Instead of saying, how's math going? You could be more specific and say, can you explain to me what you're working on? Student, you're just picked up your kid from school, or they just walked off the bus, right? Maybe not just, ease them in, but being more specific might help them, remember that they explored during their school day. Instead of saying, what is the answer? Say, how did you make sense of the problem? This emphasizes the work that they're doing to make sense of the problem and not just the answer, because that process is so much more powerful than just getting the correct answer. Instead of saying, what did you learn in math class today? You could be even more specific and ask, did you learn a new strategy today? And instead of saying, you are so smart, say, you are working so hard. And that helps to foster that growth mindset when the math inevitably does get more challenging. We want to put an emphasis on their hard work. And if there's anything that you glean from the presentation tonight, I hope instead of saying, let me show you my way, say, tell me what you are thinking. So as our time comes to a close, I want to return our attention to the 3 images from the beginning of the presentation, where you reflected on your own math identity as a learner. The struggling elephant, many of us identified with that coasting otter, probably just knowing that procedural thinking, just enough to get by. And some of us do have that confidence in math. And I want you to take a moment, if you were exposed to this level of instruction that your child is experiencing today? Do you still think you'd be that struggling elephant, or just enough to be coasting by in their math journey? So now I'm going to show you the next slide of images. And I want you to think about how you want your child to view themselves as a math learner. Do you want your child to be wise like an owl, thinking of appropriate, efficient tools, being a good listener to the strategies and thinking of their peers? Do you want them to be able to persevere and never give up like this little duckling? Push through that productive struggle, because that aha moment is going to stick with them when they get over that hump. Do you want them to be brave like a lion, to take on challenging tasks, to share their thinking and defend their thinking, and brave enough to make mistakes and learn from them? And proud like a peacock, proud of themselves, of the work that they are doing to make sense of the problem, proud that they have the learning experiences of using tools, of that concrete thinking, shifting to representational thinking, and then moving to the abstract. They're proud of the work that they've done. So I hope it's a combination of all of these images. Families, the work that your child's teacher is doing each day, building fluency, providing tools, facilitating making connections between strategies, finding connections between those islands, having students defend their thinking. This is all providing students or providing opportunities for your child to be problem solvers and make sense of the mathematical world around them. And that's what I have for you tonight. Thank you.
So I see the time. If anybody has any questions or that you would like Francesca or myself to answer, you can feel free to place those into the Q&A at the bottom. We understand and we want to respect your time. It is 7:30, so we are wrapping up. If you have questions, you can stick around. We will stick around. If you are all set, you may have a great night.
Thank you, everyone.
So lots of appreciation, Mrs. Fighting-Kevitz. Thank you for all you do. Wonderful job. Thank you all for joining in. We really appreciate it. We appreciate your thanks. And we love to talk math with parents and children. So you may email us.
Ditto. We love talking about math. Something that I never thought I would say. First grade Francesca, middle school Francesca did not have those feelings. And I wish I had learned math like this.
Okay, I think that is about it, Francesca.
Fabulous.
People are just another comment coming in that I want to share. Thank you, Mrs. Fighting-Kevitz. I'm feeling even more confident now to assist my first grader with his math.
That's the goal. That's why I did this.
An excellent presentation. This was great. Thank you. Thank you all for the support. the support to your students, the support to our teachers. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you for taking the time this evening to join us.